Okay, so we all knew that this was going to happen sooner or later. Um, Kevin is sick, and Adam is still off in space fighting the Thousand-Year War. So it's come down to this me. This is George. I'm by myself. And this is the Busy Daddies Do Sci-Fi podcast.
So are we rolling?
We rolling. So what about now? The case that you made for doing this intro was something like there needs to be an intro because that's just what you're used to. It's the standard convention.
Oh, I'm not used to anything because I don't really listen to these.
Okay,
But like,
all right.
Well, there's usually something.
When
There's
I
usually
hear-
like a bam 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 bam.
the being the busy daddy science fiction.
Well, no matter what we do to
Which
start
is-
it, it's got to be more interesting than this.
yeah. No, that's it.
All right, good. We got our intro.
Cool.
Okay, so where could we possibly go from here? Basically, what I'm going to do is, wife's asleep, boy's asleep. I'm just going to run down the list of some of the stuff that I've absorbed in the last couple weeks. Now, look, usually when we do this, we've got Adam, and Adam is encyclopedic when it comes to science fiction. He's got the track record for it, and he knows what he likes, and he knows what he doesn't like. Kevin he's a voracious reader. He is an absorber of words, and you can just tell it in the way he speaks. Gold pours out of the guy's mouth. I'm basically just saying all this because I hope he forgets that I owe him $5. So I probably shouldn't have said that on a podcast. Well, do me a favor, listener, don't remind him. Look, I was told to watch the movie It Follows. I was told to watch this movie by two friends of mine, friends who've been friends for a very long time. I don't know if they're going to be friends for much longer if they keep on making recommendations such as this. Sorry, Dave. Sorry, Justin. I know that this movie has got 97% on Rotten Tomatoes. Every critic seems to be in love with it. I just didn't get it. I thought it was pretty stupid. I didn't find it to be... I mean, it's a new idea, which I guess in and of itself is pretty refreshing. The soundtrack was cool. It kind of reminded me of, like, the Goblin from Dawn of the Dead soundtrack. But other than that, nothing really blew me away about it. It's just... If you don't know anything about it, it's basically like this demonic STD. I mean, there's no other way to describe it. That gets transferred from person to person after they have sex. So this guy gives it to this girl. The girl is our protagonist. We follow her around. Everywhere she goes, she is endlessly and relentlessly followed by this force. This force takes the image of certain people, either people she knows or doesn't know. But you can always tell it. Like, you can pick it out of a crowd. It's always got this, like, I'm coming to get you look, and it's walking straight for you. It's an interesting premise. I thought it landed kind of flat. I thought it didn't follow its own rules, which is what really kind of bugged me about it. It set up this idea that they will never stop, except apparently when they just want to look creepy while standing on top of a roof. So, and then there's one scene where they try a very, like, teenage kid way of killing the demon, which is kind of hysterical because they play it out as it would have played out in real life. It's just horrible. And this fucking demon starts, like, picking stuff up and throwing it at them, and it just came across as silly. I didn't think it was a very good movie overall. There were a few creepy things in it, but I don't think it is anywhere near of deserving the praise that it's been getting. So that's It Follows. Again, good idea, just kind of piss poor execution. If you got your Google open right now, Quentin Tarantino actually had a few interesting things to say about this movie, and they kind of fall in line with what I felt. So yeah, there's that. Listener, I just found myself imagining something. Now, how far off is it that we will be able to wake up, ask for a cup of coffee to be made. It will start being made. Get in our car, get into a horrible accident, and our car will heal all of our wounds for us. Just some sort of a... I want to hear that one more time. And then we're fine. And we go about our day. Our cup of coffee hasn't even spilt. I don't know. Just something I was thinking about. I was finally able to wrap up the Hunger Games movies. Now, I have not read any of these books. Big surprise. Look, if you're just now tuning in, I might as well get it out there. I am not the most literate one of this group. I know that's hard to believe. You know, it's not that I don't enjoy reading. It's that I see it as a monotonous, tiresome chore that I derive absolutely no pleasure from. So like I said, not that I don't enjoy it. That's not true at all. It's got to grab me. That's it. It's got to have a good hook. I mean, I can sit down. I read World War Z in one sitting in like 10 hours because it had the hook. I fucking love zombies. I love post-apocalyptic horror. I mean, you know, there have been books that I've just sat down and shot right through. I picked up recently Mr. G by Alan Lightman and got like 5 chapters into it. Just put it down, you know. I am also of the mindset that once I start something, I don't necessarily have to finish it. I just think that life is too short right now for me to invest very, very valuable time into something that I'm not fully engaged in. So where was I going with all this? Oh, that's right, The Hunger Games. So, The Hunger Games, Mockingjay Part 2, finally got around to seeing it. And, you know, this series has never been top-notch. It would certainly fall into the category of guilty pleasure if I actually believed there was such a thing as a guilty pleasure. I mean, bottom line is, if I enjoyed something, I enjoyed it. The series has been up and down through the run of, how many, I don't know, 10 fucking movies? I don't know how many they've made. 4, something like that. I gotta say, I really, really enjoyed this one. I kind of loved the resolution. I really, the continuing string throughout all these movies that I thought was the most interesting was the relationship between Katniss and President Snow. And I thought it had a really great ending. And it doesn't hurt that Donald Sutherland is pretty much amazing in every single thing that he does. The first time I ever saw Donald Sutherland in anything was the remake of Invasion of the Body Snatchers. I saw that probably too young, and you know, it's got that moment that you just, it's stereotypical and cliche, where he's just, you know, pointing at the outsider and doing that screech, that roar, and then I saw him in JFK after that as X, and I fell in love with the guy. I loved him, anything he does, and then of course MASH. I mean, you know, the dude, he's fucking Donald Sutherland, man. He's Kiefer Sutherland's father. Like, you know, and Kiefer Sutherland, don't get me wrong, is not a fraction of the amount of cool as Donald Sutherland is. Wait a minute, do I need to take that back? All right, and not, of course, Jack Bauer. 24 is crap. But Lost Boys, come on. Yeah, okay. Kiefer Sutherland's pretty cool. Hunger Games, Mockingjay, Part 2. Not bad. Does the one thing that I do think is semi-unforgivable in these types of movies. It's that it expects us to have any emotional attachment to some of the characters and then watch them die quickly and horribly, and as though that death is enough for us to go, oh no, not Tommy, I loved him so much, Tommy. Or, oh, damn it, Trident guy, he just got married. Oh, well, I guess we'll see how that rolls out. Oh, he's having a son, great. Happy ending after all. So, listener, I am either doing really well at this whole thing by myself, or I'm delusional, and I'm doing really, really badly. What was that? Just the wind. No, not the wind, the air conditioning. I live in Los Angeles, and it's about 108 degrees right now, and that is not an exaggeration. It is 108 degrees right now. The wind. You guys familiar with a little show called The X-Files? You might have heard about it. It had a pretty decent run back in the early to mid to late 90s. I think they wrapped the whole thing up around 2000, too late, basically. I loved The X-Files. I really it rang such a bell for 14-year-old George. I mean, I was the kid who was going to figure out who killed John F. Kennedy. Because I had books, man. All right, I had books on who it was. I had recreated. I wanted my science fair project to be a recreation of Dealey Plaza, and my science teacher said, "No, George." He said, "No, there is absolutely no scientific value in that." And I copped a big old resentment against Mr. Stein in 7th grade, but whatever. God rest his soul. Probably. I think so. Anyway, I went, that little X-Files show. It had that thing where it just got too popular, and then they didn't know what to do with it. So David Duchovny decided that he wanted to leave because he wanted to go star in a show where he could just have as much, let's just say call it what it is. He could have as many tits rub up against his chest as he possibly could in the course of an hour-long Showtime show. So he went and did Californication. And, I don't want to get off on a tangent here, but Showtime shows, I've never seen one of them that I think was anything but like story molded around an excuse to show tits and ass. Which, you could say probably Game of Thrones is a little bit, but at least the story molded around it is really, really fucking good and filled with really, really compelling characters. Shows like Nurse Jackie, what was the one they had about Henry V, The Tudors, and Californication, and it just seemed like an excuse to show softcore porn and have it be respectable because they're dressed like Shakespeare. I don't know. I am getting so opinionated right now, and that's probably because I'm terrified that I'm by myself. But, where was I with this? The X-Files. Yes, bringing it back around to the X-Files. The X-Files came back for a mini-series on Fox. Can you believe that? It came back, and here's the shocker. It wasn't horrible. It wasn't good, but it wasn't horrible. There were actually 2 really, really good episodes in that limited run. The one that I'm thinking of that really stood out was the one with Rhys Darby. They guest starred as a lizard man, a prehistoric lizard man, who comes out of hibernation and gets bitten by a human and then turns into a human. So it's like a reverse werewolf thing, and he is compelled by the things that we must do as humans. It's not like a werewolf where he wants to run out and kill people, or he's not a vampire and he wants to drink blood. He is a man. He turns from a lizard creature into a man, and now he wants to get a job, and he wants to be in a relationship, and he wants to get a cheap hotel room and drink whiskey and watch porn. It's such a great, funny, off the wall, just in the same vein of Jose Chung's From Outer Space and War of the Copperphages, some of the better funny X-Files episodes. And that was one of the things that was always the most charming about that show, is it had those deep mythology episodes, there's the cigarette smoking man, and there's the well manicured man, and look, here comes the maybe short, maybe tall man, and he's walking behind the you better not work for the man, and all that stuff. And then you had the episodes that just completely knew what this show was. That it was a little bit of schlock, and now you know what we're going to do. For an hour, we're going to turn it all up to 15, and we're going to have a good time. And it produced some amazingly memorable television. when that show was good, man, it was revolutionarily good. And then it got really bad. When David Duchovny left and they replaced him with, who's charming? Who's David Duchovny level of charming? I don't know. How about the T-1000? Yeah, great idea. How about the guy whose job it was to look like he was made of iron and walk around asking if anybody had seen John Connor? Let's toss him in there. So here comes Agent Doggett. And then later on, there was some, I don't know, some Latina woman. They tossed her in there. I don't remember her friggin' name. And yeah, way too long. You knew that show was going downhill the moment, like, Skinner showed up in the opening credits. You know, it was like, I don't know. We got Mitch Pileggi. He was in Shocker. So, there we go. You know, I really, really like to think that I'm the one in control of my brain, but then I stop for a second and I realize what's telling me that. So Seth Rogen and his writing partner, Evan Goldberg, created something that doesn't suck and is good without being based entirely on marijuana. They adapted Preacher, which is a Garth Ennis comic book about a man, a preacher from Texas named Jesse, who is given power of God's voice, basically. He can force people to do whatever he tells them to do. And the thing that I love about it is it's literal. You know, it's really, really literal. So if he looks at a person and tells them to go fuck themselves, they're gonna try and find a way to actually go fuck themselves. If he tells a guy, it happens in the first episode, he tells a guy to go to his mother and open his heart to her, and the guy ends up opening his chest with a kitchen knife and pulling his heart out in front of his elderly mother. And it is fantastic, man. I would be very surprised if this is not like the new AMC show in the vein of Breaking Bad and The Walking Dead. It's a great mixture of the sacred and the profane, and it walks a delicate line between both of them, and it does a fantastic job. It was one of my favorite comic books. It was one of those coming-of-age books that once you get away from superheroes, you start to realize that, there's pretty serious shit out there, and some of it's kind of dark. Starts kind of with Neil Gaiman's Sandman. That's where it started with me, because it was sort of like the closest thing to comic books. And then it continues to get darker and darker, and you realize there's stuff out there like Preacher. And it's so good, man. It's so good. One of the characters' names is Arseface, and he's got a hole in his face because I put a shotgun in his mouth, tried to blow his head off, didn't work, so now his face looks like a butthole. And they call him Arseface. And he's just this regular teenage kid trying to live his life, completely regretting something that he did. Fantastic so far. They've already gotten into some world building. You could tell that there's got two characters that are just delightfully cast, who are basically angels, whose job it is to get this thing that jumped into Jesse out of him, because it doesn't belong in a human being, because who the hell knows what's going to happen. We've already seen some flashbacks to, the 1890s and a cowboy and things that I know where they're going to go, but it's so cool to see that they're already laying this groundwork for what will hopefully be like a sprawling universe that this show is going to create. Good characters, like decent mix of like down home, good-hearted folk and evil sons of bitches. So, yeah, man, Preacher. If you haven't read it, seek it out. Seek out the Garth Ennis books. And if you're not watching it, what are you doing? Watch Preacher on AMC. AMC, please mail that paycheck to Busy Daddies Do Sci-Fi, P.O. Box 666, Hollywood, California. You know what? I I was gonna go off a little bit on Wizards and do some Ralph Bakshi stuff, but I don't know. This has been pretty content heavy, and it's certainly lacking the dynamic of the banter back and forth between me and two other gentlemen that it is an absolute privilege to be able to do this podcast with. We get to do this. Our life affords us the opportunity to do this, and it is a privilege to be the one who gets to soldier on when two of the busy daddies get too busy. This is something that we knew would happen. It is something that we are prepared for, and it's something that is not going to stop this podcast from going. We have done it in the absence of Adam before. Tonight I get to do it in the absence of Kevin and Adam. In the future, I'm sure it will be done in my absence as well. We will soldier on. This is the Busy Daddies Do Sci-Fi podcast, and we are not stopping. Thank you for listening, listener. Be well. All right, thanks for listening. You can subscribe to Busy Daddies Do Sci-Fi on iTunes, Stitcher, or wherever you listen to podcasts. If you listen, please take the time to rate and review. Reviews keep us on the charts, and that way people can find us. You can follow us at BDD Sci-Fi on Twitter and Instagram, or if you want to learn more about the Busy Daddies, check out bddsci-fi.com. Thanks for listening, and see you every other Wednesday.